Hello everyone, hope all of you are fine and doing well. Here I'll be discussing with you your chapter tissues. So let me explain this chapter throughout this PPT. But first of all, you should know about cells and the basic introduction of this chapter. As you know, all the living organisms, they are made up of cells, and in the previous chapter we have studied about the cell, and that cell is the functional and structural unit of life. Cell is the fundamental and structural unit of an organism. So on the basis of those cells, we have mainly two types of organisms. We have unicellular organisms and we have multicellular organisms. So if we talk about your unicellular organisms like amoeba, parameciums, they are made up of single cell, and in those organisms single cell perform all the basic functions, all the basic activities like movement, intake of food, digestion, respiration, excretion, reproduction, etc. And whereas if you talk about multicellular organisms, they are made up of number of cells, they are made up of millions of cells, fine, and each cell is specialized to perform different functions. Therefore they show division of labor. So you can define what is division of labor. Division of labor in human, in any body, in the body of any multicellular organisms means specialization of cells and their grouping with each specialized group of cells, fine. So if for example in animal body, muscle cells perform different function, a function of movement of body. Nerve cell helps in the conduction of messages, whereas blood cells helps in the transportation of material throughout the body. In the similar manner, if you talk about plant cells, if you talk about plant category, cells of phloem conduct food from leaves to other part of the body, fine. So this specialization is achieved only due to differentiation, as it is possible because cells, they occupy different shape, different size, different functions. So now you can define what are tissues. So tissue is a group of cell with a common origin, structure, function that work together to perform a particular function. For example, blood, bone, cartilage are some of the examples of animal tissues, while xylem, phloem, parenchyma, etc. they are different types of tissues which are found in plants, fine. So this study of tissues is called as histology, and the term was firstly coined by Meyer, fine. Now do you really think that plants and animals, they have same type of tissues? What would be the answer? So answer will be no, they do not have same type of tissues. Though plants and animals, they have similar type of life processes, but due to difference in their organization, lifestyle, their mode of living, they do not have similar type of tissues. So let us have a look how plants and animal tissues, they are different from each other. So if you talk about your plant tissues, they have a stationary phase, means plants remain fixed at a particular place, fine. And whereas your animal tissues, they have locomotive phase. Locomotive phase means animals are mobile, they have to move in search of food, in search of shelter, hence most of their tissues are living also. So you can correct the spelling of locomotive, it is LOCOMOTIVE, locomotive, fine. It is just I misspelled it. You can correct the spelling of locomotive. Next is your plant tissues, they do not require lot of energy. Why they do not require lot of energy? They require less energy because most of the plant tissues, they are dead, fine. And animal cells, they require lot of energy because most of the tissues in animals, they are living. Next, they have more dead plant tissues have more dead cells as it produces mechanical energy, whereas animal tissues, they have more living cells. Plants, they are able to make their own food, whereas animals, they cannot make their own food and depend on other organisms. Plant tissues, they are mainly of two types, meristematic tissues and permanent tissues, whereas animal tissues, there are four types of animal tissues. We have epithelial, connective, muscular and nervous tissues. Fine. So we will be discussing about plants and animal tissues one by one separately. So here we have a mind map of flow chart, mind map of plant tissue. So plant tissues mainly categorized into meristematic and permanent tissues. Meristematic tissues, they are mainly, these are those tissues in which cells are capable of division. Fine. So whereas permanent tissues are those in which cells, they do not divide, the cells, they are not capable of division. Meristematic tissues, they are categorized further as apical tissues, intercalary tissues and lateral tissues, whereas permanent tissues, they are further categorized as simple tissues and complex tissues. Simple tissues, they are further divided into parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma, whereas complex tissues, they are categorized as xylem and phloem. Fine. So we will be discussing about all these tissues, their functions one by one separately. And one thing more I would like to just share with you, that the biggest organ within the human body is liver, whereas the largest organ is skin. So remember, the biggest organ within the human body is liver, whereas the largest organ is skin. Fine. So this is also one of the very important chapter, tissues, to study the organization of any organism. Just to study, by studying these tissues, their types, their functions, we'll be able to understand that how living organism, they are organized. Fine. So we have different levels of organization in the living body. Firstly we have cell, from cell it become tissues, and a group of cells form tissues, then tissues combine to form organ, organ combines to form organ system, and ultimately organ system combines to form an full-fledged organism. Fine. So this is all about for your today's topic. Next, the explanation of plant tissues we'll be discussing in the next PPT.